Hello and welcome to Wehry Dads. I'm your host, PJ Wehry, with my co-host.
Dad, good to be together again, man. It's been a bit.
Been a hot minute. So tell me, Dad,
Yes.
Coach,
Yes.
Pete Wehry, who's our sponsor?
Today's sponsor is Hallmark Cards, where you can buy one for $10 and get the second one free.
There you go.
Just a little thought there. But if they'll get behind us, I will continue to purchase Hallmark cards.
It's our business is what's keeping them in business.
Well, buy one, get for $10 and get the second one
There
free.
you go.
And that's pretty awesome.
So today's brought to you by Hallmark Cards.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hallmark, for nothing, because they're
that's
not really
true.
sponsored.
Don't do that because we might not ever
You
get
never
them.
know.
Right?
You never know. Hallmark
Next one's going to be the Hallmark movie channel. That's which they
keeping
can
women
afford.
happy during Christmas season for the last several decades.
And men's nerves, men's stress. And that's our subject for
Our
today.
topic today is
stress from Hallmark movies.
how to deal with stress. This is a little bit more your boat. You just did this in one of your life coaching sessions. First off, let's talk about stress before we get into the strategies.
Right, no question.
What is stress? And I think a big thing for me, and this is something I had to come to realize, is that stress is often mentioned in negative contexts, but stress isn't automatically negative. In fact, there's a lot of good things to stress.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's I've come to realize it's more like building a muscle, right? Like you can overwork yourself and hurt yourself, but you also need to spend time pushing your boundaries, getting out of your comfort zone, and that is stressful.
Right.
And so life isn't about reducing your stress, though that might be appropriate at times. It's not about avoiding stress. It's about dealing with stress in the correct way.
Just understanding that stress is part of life. Okay. So I think that we need to be aware of there are things that we do that will bring stress in our life, whether it be family challenges, illnesses, struggles there. If you ask anybody, that finances are always a challenge, a stressor. I shouldn't say always, but have that
very often. Yeah,
they have that tendency. If you
have a lot of money, it can become a family issue.
Right, and it could be a stressful issue. So and then for family. So the stress is real. Stress can be seen in your physical responses. It could be seen in your physiological responses. It can be seen on your emotional responses, being short with people. So the first thing is stress is real. Stress will always be there. But what we really want to deal with today, and I think as all men, we deal with stress. Okay. And one of the things that we've talked about is how do we deal with stress, first of all, as a man. Okay. So let's talk about what are stresses that almost all men have. There's some natural things.
I don't know if I'd say all men, but I would say 99% of men have to deal with work-related stress.
Yep. And then if they're married, and we come that from a husband's perspective, they feel very, very responsible as a protector and the provider. And both of those can lead to stressors. For example, we've already mentioned two major stressors: health, okay, and finances. And that is protector and provider. So tell me maybe even some instances that you feel like protection-wise, like you felt stress.
Oh, that's great. I immediately thought of, and it's one of the things under the stress coping strategy you talk about, accept that you cannot control everything. I think one of the biggest ones, even if I fail, but I have the chance to protect, I feel fine. When it's something I cannot protect against and I feel helpless, that's a great example of bad stress. So something like your kid gets sick, or someone in your family, whether it's your wife, is working through something and it's not something you can help with.
Right.
There's often everyone has their own spiritual journey and has their own set of struggles. And there's only so much you can do to help somebody. And so when you're at that point, you're watching and this is going to happen in every marriage where it's like, I think I've mentioned on here, but Chris Rock said, marriage isn't hard. Marriage is easy. It's just like moving a couch. If you try to do it by yourself, it's impossible. But if you have someone else helping, it works. Right. And so, when I look at that, and I look at trying just those moments where you're like, I can't move the couch by myself, and those protective instincts kick in, can be really problematic, if that makes sense. It can be really so. You're like, I'm not, and it could be a provision thing too. It's like it all mixes in together. It's like you're supposed to provide leadership. That's what headship in the Bible is, and you just can't provide more than can't take away someone else's agency, someone else's choice, someone else's obedience. Right? Obedience to Scripture. Like I can't face my wife's temptations for her, and she can't face my temptations for me. And while you can provide support for somebody, you can't solve other people's weaknesses.
Right.
And so to me, that's immediately pops to mind with all this.
Yeah. So, when I'm looking up at our little sign here, Manhood, Mentoring, Maturity, Wehry Dads, what we're trying to help people with is, so you're looking at that first thought of, okay, protector, and you said it, the statement is this, accept that you cannot control everything. We know there's only one that is in control.
Right.
He is sovereign. That helps us with that one. But still, when you have a child that is sick or a child that may have a lifelong illness, those are really difficult things to navigate. And we'll address some of the ways you could deal with that. But the first one, though, do you realize some of this is out of your control. It's not your fault. The second one is, go.
I was just going to say, there's scripture for that. Cast all your cares on him because he cares for you. I just said to Becky Sue the other day, because there's some business stuff where I was just like, that you can't solve that. Like that's beyond your control. And she's like, yes, thank you. That's stuff she says back to me, and it's just really good.
Well, and you're protecting her there. Provision is there's this constant desire to make sure your family's taken care of. And so, men, as we are going through this, and obviously we're glad that women would be listening too, but as we deal with men, those are two major ones that come up and you see all the time. And I felt that, often, and especially in my 30s and 40s, we weren't making a lot. And you know what? The truth is, because we have a skewed view of what true provision is, you could provide for your family financially and with material, but sometimes they need way more than that. So provision shouldn't be limited to just that materialism or financial sustenance. It should be way more than that.
Yeah.
So do you want to just kind of go through the list of a couple of those things? And I'd like us to then just bounce those off. Here's some ways, like, men, if you're dealing with stress right now, here are some things that they say that we may not go through all of them, but whatever you got there. And I think we need to, men, I would encourage you maybe to write some of these down.
Yeah. The first one you have is take a time out. And I think, this can be meditation, yoga. I love getting massages on here. I don't know, if that works for you, that works. Listen to music. That's been really good. And then, I've actually recommended this multiple times in the last couple weeks. Stepping back from the problem helps clear your mind. And making decisions based on emotions rarely works. There are a few cases where I think it's powerful, and I don't think those are emotions. I think those are what I would say is your gut. So for
maybe
instance,
almost spirit-led. I feel like God's clearly giving me the wisdom in
even
this,
though it doesn't
discernment.
quite make sense. Yeah. Honestly, that's how I married Becky Sue, based on my gut. Like, she was the one, and I don't know why, but it worked out. But most of the time when you're in the thick of it, you have more time to make the decision than you think. And I think that's really big, is to step back And one of the most powerful things, and this has come up a lot in Chasing Leviathan, it came up with Dr. Diva Woodley, Dr. Lewis Gordon, Marisa Zalabak. They all talked about one of the biggest problems we have just as human beings is we don't recognize how many or how much possibility we have. So when you look at a situation, a lot of times your first thought is, okay, here are my two choices. I need to make one of these two choices. But especially in our day and age, and there were, even back in the day, when you lived in your little hamlet, you had more choices than you thought. But now you have like 500 choices. And to stop and look back and say, I can create more choices if it looks like two dead ends is a very powerful tool in your toolkit.
Yeah. So as you do that, as you just talk about taking a time out, as you go, one of the things that I would say is like, I've read this, seen it. I actually do it. I work at my desk. For 55 minutes, I'll go for a walk, a 5-minute walk. And then even as you're contemplating decisions, it helps you to get away from this stuck view that it opens the horizons. Yeah. The next one, and I think these all three can kind of go together, right? Sure. Eat well-balanced meals, limit alcohol and caffeine, which very frankly, in the afternoon, sometimes when I'm dragging a little bit, instead of drinking water, which would probably give me enough, I'll have a cup of coffee, not best. And the other one, and these kind of, again, I'll go together, get enough sleep.
Oh, this happened to me the other day.
Okay.
No, I literally, I have been working on my self-talk for years. When I lost my job and Becky Sue lost her job, I had this voice, you talked about your voice, Fred, like the one guy calls his bad self-talk that's Fred talking. It was like, I'm a loser. That's something that gets repeated. I don't know why. It just is what it is. And I hadn't heard that in months, maybe years. And even when it did, it would crop up and go away. And then it was persistent for like all of last week. And I was like, what is going on? And then I realized I was sick and I hadn't been getting enough sleep. I mean, the combination of that, you're like, everything just looks like because you will naturally take your current state and apply it to your current situation. And I was like, I do not have the energy to handle all these problems right now. Which of course is silly. I was like, well, after I got my first full 8 hours in a while because Soren had been coming in. And then I woke up and I was like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
So that's one of the pictures or one of the results of stress too. Yeah. And so you have the responsibilities of stress and then you don't feel well. That adds more stress. Yes. Because you feel like you're getting behind. And I hope as we're talking out there, folks, that you're just going, okay, these are not like, we didn't come up with new ideas, but what we're helping you understand is that stress is real. When stress comes, you'll see it, you either emotionally you'll get short or you'll shut down. Physically, you have zero energy. You'll be not only just tired, but distracted. Well, all of these things are real, but there are things you can do. One of the things it has here is then take deep breaths, count to 10. But here's what I would say there. It goes back to what PJ said. I think that's where you meditate, you stop, you pray. All those things are real. I think the next few, folks, are really something you might want to consider. One of the things that we get going, we got stress, is sometimes we still are seeking for perfection. And perfection is not always capable to be done. It's just to do your best. All right? And then the Bible says in Proverbs, a merry heart doeth like a good medicine. And I will tell you this, humor can help relieve some stress.
Oh, without a doubt. And that is definitely a coping strategy that you have gifted me with. No. And it's so true. I can't tell you how much, what a blessing that you handing that down to our family has been to Becky Sue and I. So good. The maintain a positive attitude. There is like I don't like the way that's phrased, probably because I have stories behind that, which we don't need to go into, but basically that idea of recognizing self-talk. Yep. Like there are things that you say to yourself over and over again, and recognizing true things and saying true things and getting rid of bad things. I had Andy Leaf on, and I asked him if he meditated and what that meditation consisted of. And he said he wakes up every morning. He said it's much easier to get rid of lies than to say something true. And so what he does, he looks at himself in the mirror every morning and says, God doesn't make trash, this negative meditation. And I think that's really, grounding yourself in your worth in Christ, but just starting with like the truth will flow out of that kind of negative, that kind of, you're creating space for the truth to flow in by getting rid of the lies. So God doesn't make losers. You know what I mean? Like that, like thinking in those kind of ways.
So you're saying that. So there are two other things that kind of come to mind on you verbalizing.
Yeah.
Truth. And I think it's wise to journal truth. Like say, this is how I feel. This is not true. This is what is true.
Yeah.
And then when you sit back and, even as you're journaling, you often get into a stage of being grateful for things. It'll change your mindset, which is all part of the stress.
Yeah.
Because we all look at it and think we've got to be to a certain spot. I've got to get all this done. And sometimes you can't get it all done and you can't do it perfect and you got to do your best. So, all right. So we've talked a little bit about all this in regards to as a man, as a husband. And then how do you feel like stress plays out as a father?
Oh, so I actually had it kind of set up a little differently. I thought we'd do all the application at the end.
Okay,
so
we'll
what
go.
we wanted to do we wanted to provide a little more structure for the podcast and give you something to look forward to. Why are you listening to us? And we want to give you something for each of the kind of the roles that we are talking about. So as a man, I think dealing with stress, one of the things that biologically is just a big deal is physical release. Men tend to have more of a need to be active.
Right.
Among other things, like it's a real thing. So having some kind of physical release, whether it's exercise or whatever, is just super important. So if you're not, like for me, even if I just go out for a walk, because I can get locked in the house because we all work in the house, we live in the house. And there have been days where I'm like, I feel bad. And I'm like, I haven't seen the sun all day. That's my mistake. As a husband, I would say create space for your wife. And I think that can be you taking on some of her responsibilities to give her that space to, clear her head. Or it could be creating a special time and taking her on a date. But looking for opportunities to create space for your wife is really big. And then as a father, I think as you look at some of these, you have get involved, learn what triggers your anxiety. Whenever you have like sudden spurts of like, oh no, something feels terrible. Figure out what is causing that. Teach these to your kids. One of the biggest problems we have is that we learn coping strategies in childhood and we just take the first one that semi works, regardless of what the long-term consequences are. So as a father, teach your children how to handle their emotions, teach them how to handle stress. Yeah. And then personally for me, I just come back to that exercise thing because I get too busy and I get too wrapped up in what I'm doing and too wrapped up in my own head and I just need to go out. I have time, but I convince myself I don't.
Yeah, you're in a different, and I think for even as I share this is a different stage for me.
Yeah.
So for food and exercise, those have been coming pretty, and careful folks, I don't mean to say it but it's been pretty easy.
Yeah.
Because I have that flexibility. I have not for 2 weeks because I got sick. And I'll be honest with you, that has really been tough. But your mom and I, this, we created a little porch in the morning. We have breakfast every morning together, eating oatmeal, which old people do, I guess, on the porch. That has been a real release for stress, and it's a connection for the two of us. And then one of the things I feel like as a father, especially for you and your brother, is just hearing what's going on, listening to you kind of share. And so those are the things for me that have helped me deal with life stresses. And notice I said life, folks, not just work. For a long time, it was just the work was the major one and the finances, but there's life stresses.
Yeah.
Even like I hurt, my knee's been bothering me, and that's been another whole thing of being sick. And that's a stress to me because I like to be able to move and go forth. And so, I've rested.
Yeah.
I've rested it, kind of those choices. What do you think's the next step?
Next step. I mean, for me, it's definitely, I need to get more exercise. For anyone who's more interested in this, there's a lot of good resources. You can look up stuff on meditation.
Oh, yeah.
It depends on what you want to do. If you don't have an exercise thing, just go out and do it. It's like, you don't need a gym. You don't need a gym membership. Even just walking can make a huge difference, especially if you can get out in the sun. It's actually crazy in Wisconsin, and like Norway, like those places where like they have long nights. They actually do blue light therapy because people don't get enough sun. It's like a real thing where people get depression from it. So like, if your job keeps you indoors all day, like get outside, take that lunch break, go out and walk.
No question. Well, I hope this has been a help to you folks as we talked about stress. We all know it's real. We all have it, but praying for you that you'll be able to have victory and overcome some of it, and hope this has been a help to you.
Yeah, and if you took another step on your spiritual journey today, we ask that you'd like, share, and subscribe so someone else can too.
Hit that button. Thanks, folks.
Love you, Dad.
Love you too.